Today's episode of Off the Timeline is titled, What if Notre Dame joined the SEC in 1994? The move that rewrote the BCS era. What if I told you that in 1994, Notre Dame could have joined the SEC, and if they had, the entire BCS era would have formed differently? Not just slightly differently, completely differently. Florida versus Notre Dame SEC title games. The Big East collapsing years earlier. Miami forced in the ACC sooner. The Big Ten modernizing out of panic. This is alternate history, but it's not fantasy. This is built on real incentives, real politics, and real decisions because in 1993, Notre Dame learned something dangerous. Independence no longer guaranteed a national title. And when that realization hit, the SEC was already building the future. Let's set the table for 1993 and the breaking point, where Notre Dame beats Florida State head to head. They finish number 2, but they don't play for the national championship. The Bull Coalition has formed. Conference champions are gaining structural power, and suddenly independence feels fragile. Meanwhile, the SEC has just expanded. They've created a conference championship game, and they've proven that it prints money. The SEC is innovating. The Big Ten is still bound to the Rose Bowl, and that's the fork in the road. While this is alternate history, the incentives are very real. If Notre Dame wants guaranteed access to this title conversation going forward, they need structure. And the SEC offers it. And that sets the table to the 1994 move. In this alternate history, Notre Dame joins the SEC West in 1994. Full member, 8 conference games, no weird carve-outs. They keep USC, they keep Navy, and now they play Alabama, Auburn, LSU, Arkansas every year. You may be thinking to yourself that Notre Dame would never culturally fit the SEC. And you're right culturally. But culturally doesn't matter in realignment. Money does. The SEC championship game is already a national event. Notre Dame inside that structure makes it the de facto semifinal of college football. That's power. And let's set the table for the 1995 to 96 inflection. In 1996, Notre Dame wins the SEC West. They face Florida in the SEC championship. Spurrier versus Holtz, a national ratings dream. Now the Bowl Alliance has a problem because the SEC championship game is clearly determining the best team in the country. The BCS conversation accelerates. This alternate history isn't creating new incentives, it's accelerating existing ones. And you may be thinking to yourself that the SEC schools would never vote yes. But let's look at who benefits. Alabama gains national Midwest exposure. LSU strengthens schedule credibility. Auburn gets annual national brand matchups. Revenue rises for everyone. And when revenue rises, objections shrink. And let's set the table for the 97 and 98 ripple. By 1997, the Big Ten realizes something. They are behind. No championship game, no structural semifinal moment, so they begin seriously modernization discussions earlier than in real life. Meanwhile, the Big East is weakening because Notre Dame is no longer orbiting it as an independent scheduling anchor. Virginia Tech left earlier. Syracuse and Pitt explore options. The conference destabilizes faster. You may be thinking to yourself, this part is way too convenient. But the Big East in the 90s was already fragile. Remove Notre Dame from the ecosystem, and the timeline speeds up. And that sets the table to 1999 to 2001 in Miami's landing. This is where it gets interesting. In this alternate history, Miami sees the instability earlier. The ACC, feeling boxed in by a stronger SEC and modernizing Big Ten, acts sooner. Miami joins the ACC by 2001, a few years earlier than in real life. The Big East collapses by 2001, and now the BCS era begins without Notre Dame as an independent wildcard. You may be thinking to yourself that Notre Dame would have simply joined the Big Ten instead. But in 1994, the Big Ten did not have a championship game. They were still tied to Rose Bowl politics. The SEC offered structural innovation immediately, and Notre Dame chose leverage over geography. And now let's set the table to the 2002-2003 national consequences. Ohio State still wins in 2002, LSU wins in 2003, but now the SEC narrative machine has been building since '94. Notre Dame's presence accelerates SEC brand dominance by almost a decade. The 2003 split title controversy still happens, but the conversation changes from access politics to strength of schedule politics because independence is no longer part of the equation. You may be thinking to yourself that the SEC would never place Notre Dame in the West. Geography bends in realignment, revenue doesn't. You may be thinking to yourself that NBC would block this, but Notre Dame could retain home rights while paying into the SEC pool. Money solves structure. You may be thinking to yourself that this is just SEC fan fiction, but this alternate history is grounded in 1993 title controversy, the SEC championship game model, the Bull Coalition's fragility, the Big East instability, and the ACC's expansion ambitions. These incentives are already moving. The universe just aligns them earlier. By 2003, college football looks more consolidated. SEC dominance starts earlier. The Big Ten modernizes sooner. The Big East dissolves faster. Miami moves earlier. The BCS formed under cleaner power blocks. All because Notre Dame chose structure over independence. That's the butterfly effect. You may be thinking to yourself that this would have changed everything, and that's exactly the point. Alternate history doesn't mean impossible. It means plausible decisions taken one step earlier. And sometimes that's all it takes. And if you enjoyed this alternate history deep dive and want more chaotic but plausible realignment scenarios, make sure to like the video, drop your thought in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. Would Notre Dame have survived the SEC West grind? Would Florida still dominate? And does Miami end up stronger or weaker in this timeline? Let me know below, and I'll see you in the next timeline.